Hi everyone, so I'm delighted today to be joined by a household name, the BBC, an organisation which exists to enrich people's lives with great programmes and services that inform, educate and entertain. But do you know what is on offer for you STEM students at the BBC? Well, today we'll find out a little bit more. So the BBC and Gradcracker have worked together for a number of years now. They advertise their placement and graduate opportunities with us and also their degree apprenticeships. So let's find out about the BBC from the people who are in the know and meet the panel. I have got the pleasure of introducing you to Mark Smith, who is the Schemes and Assessments Manager. So Mark is also a really, really good friend of mine, and I'm really looking forward to introducing you, the panel, and the attendees to Mark. So Mark, firstly tell me about BBC as an organisation.
Absolutely, yeah, it's great for you to host us again, Carla, this year. So at the BBC, we're coming up to being 100 years old. So again, there's a huge piece of work that the BBC are doing at the moment for 2022, as the BBC is nearly 100 years old as an organisation. It truly is an organisation that is for everybody. Across the whole of the UK. Opportunities that we're supporting as a recruitment team this year go as far up as Shetland and Orkney, down to the Channel Islands, across into Northern Ireland, Wales, into Scotland, and all across England. We're specifically focusing on our grad schemes and our STEM opportunities with you and with Gradcracker today. But it's a huge opportunity for me to promote the BBC as a whole. And again, the new DG, Tim Davey, has announced fantastic plans for early careers over the next 5 years at the BBC. So it's just really exciting for us to be able to sort of share. Do you know what? Some of the schemes that maybe don't get as much love, really. You know, we're known for our flagship journalism programs and the production programs, but how often do we get to talk about what it's like to work in broadcasting or software engineering or working in research and development? And with my colleagues today, we're going to be able to tell you about some of the things that maybe we don't share as often with the students that want to hear about it. So I'm excited about today.
Yeah, so am I, because I think you just hit the nail on the head there, Mark. People know about BBC as like the journalism arm and everything else, but I mean, you do some fantastic things like broadcast engineering, software engineering, research and development, and the panel today are going to really go into a lot of detail about their roles, what they do, and the future that you could also have as attendees at the BBC. So Mark, give the audience a bit of an idea about your role within the BBC, and if the students who are applying will get to meet you as part of the application process.
Yeah, so my role at the BBC is I'm the Schemes and Assessments Manager. So anybody who joins the BBC on a scheme that we look after, whether that be apprenticeship schemes, graduate programs, placements, it's me and my team that look after the recruitment and attraction for those campaigns. So if you're seeing and following us on social media at the moment, that's the stuff that my team do for BBC Get In and BBC Careers and on LinkedIn. We look after the websites, all the careers website stuff that you see for us, right the way through to we design your assessment process. So the application form that you're going to complete, the questions that you have to answer, the experience that you have with the line managers when they're interviewing you, and the questions and the assessments that you're going to do. That's all led through my team and the people that I work with. So we really do take you from the first click when you click and see I want to apply for the BBC, right the way through to when your job offer comes through to you and you sign that and join on your first day. So that's the journey that we look after, really, as the early careers team.
I definitely have to give a shout out to Rachel Marks. So Rachel's watching this webinar behind the scenes, and Rachel's on Mark's team, and she's been working her little socks off, hasn't she, to make sure the hub's up to date with our team at Gradcracker. We've got lots of really cool content on the BBC Hub on Gradcracker as well, which I'll share with you a little bit later on in the webinar. So Matt, just to let everybody know, the applications are now open, aren't they, to all of your schemes. You wanted to touch upon some of the start dates, particularly for the R&D software and broadcast engineering schemes, because they might be a little bit different.
Yeah, so we've done a few different things this year with our start dates. We do have our traditional start date for September 2021, and you'll see a start date for majority of the schemes that we're talking about today for software, R&D, and some of the broadcast schemes. But we've also got a couple of additional start dates. So for the software engineering graduate program, we actually are going to have a start date in September, but we're also going to take a second cohort for March. in 2022. So when you complete the application process for software, you will actually get to pick in the question which is your preferred start date.
Yeah.
So there is an option for March if March suits people better. The couple of other roles that we have, some of the roles this year we're also pitching into January 2022. And if you see the January 2022 start date and you've got any questions, it's just that you can ask us about that via our social channels or anything else if you've got any questions. But again, it links really into the BBC Centenary. So we're doing a huge push for 2022 to welcome as many people into our new talent programs as possible in our 100th year. So we've sort of tactically moved some of our start dates into 2022 as well. And equally, it should mean that more of us are back in an office rather than working from home, which is another good reason to move them back a little bit. But like I say, there is still quite a lot happening for September. But yeah, if there's any sort of questions about, different start dates, things like that, that's why we've moved the start dates around a little bit.
Yeah, fantastic. So you've got really great plans for next year. What else is happening next year, Mark? When you're celebrating your 100 years, what else have you got in store at the BBC that you can share with us?
I mean, there's huge projects. So there's actually a BBC Centenary board at the moment that are coming up with some really exciting work. That those guys are going to be releasing. The BBC Academy that look after a lot of the training and development programs that we do. They look after things like BBC Young Reporter and BBC STEM and those kinds of activities. And they're going to be launching a load of activities. I was talking to the guys at Radio 1 that, again, they're doing virtual Big Weekend this year, but I think that from next year you're going to have Big Weekend again, and I'm sure there'll be a bit of flavour around 100 years of the BBC from Radio 1. I mean, Radio 1 are probably one of the biggest youth brands that the BBC has outside BBC 3. It's not all about Radio 1. I'll be told off if I just talk about Radio 1. They do some really cool stuff as well. As well, and again, you've got growth across the digital platforms, so you'll see some new things through BBC Sounds, you'll see things through iPlayer. So again, there's a lot of stuff that's under wraps, I guess, at the moment, because the project teams are still delivering stuff. And I guess we're sort of working out what next year will look like a little bit, but it's going to be an exciting time to be at the BBC in its 100th year. I mean, what an exciting time to join an organisation, as with the history that the BBC has. Yeah,
definitely. Well, I bet you're going to have a massive party as well.
It'd be lovely, wouldn't it? Imagine getting everybody together. That feels so strange right now, but it'd be lovely if we could, wouldn't it?
Me and Jess are coming. Yeah. Get your invites in the post, Mark. Right, so before we move on to the grads, obviously we've spoken about the positions that are open for STEM students. From your experience, Mark, and I know we've worked together for years and years and years, but why specifically to the BBC is it so important for you to recruit from a STEM background?
Do you know what? It's really interesting. I get asked this question a lot about, the STEM opportunities at the BBC and sort of where it fits in the world that we work in. And you start to think, well, what's going on in the market at the moment? Who's out there? Who else? It's strange to talk about other people other than us, but who's out there? Who's doing stuff that the BBC are known to do? Amazon are pretty big in the world of sort of online entertainment and sort of their channels. We're competing with Netflix now. We're competing with the Disney platforms again as well. So I think, hang on a minute. BBC iPlayer was around there a long time ago, and it's sort of, I think for a while it was sort of thought of as that catch-up service, and you go and catch up if you miss something. And we're actually, it's sort of the future of BBC programming. You'll have seen sort of BritBox that the BBC and ITV are doing at the moment. When I joined the BBC, I started to do a bit of a walk around the buildings and started to say, well, what's happening in here, and how do we get the content that we're creating out to the consumers and the customers and license fee payers? How does it actually get there? Largely through the work of our technical teams, our design teams, our engineering teams, broadcasting teams. We can create some of the best content in the world, but if you can't broadcast it to anybody and you can't get it out into the world, it sort of takes away from the creation of it in the first place. So these tech and engineering and design schemes are hugely valuable to us, particularly around things like user experience and what audiences are looking for. And, are we creating stuff that people want? Are we getting it to them in the way that they're going to consume it? What's the future of linear television and the future of radio? And we see huge growth in things like audio and BBC. BBC Sounds has come straight out of the fact how people want to consume their audio. And you'll see the growth of platforms like BritBox and some of the changes that people have seen on BBC iPlayer in the way that actually it's not a catch-up service anymore. It's a streaming service. It's right out there.
Yeah.
And I think in order for people to be able to interact with the BBC, these teams are absolutely essential. We're going to be broadcasting things, the Olympic Games and, the Olympic Games all being broadcast. And, when we broadcast football and things like that, it's actually now huge amounts of digital audience. It's not, people aren't generally, people are still watching it on the TV, but huge amounts of what people are watching it on their phone through BBC apps and through, through catch-up services and through other things. And it's not possible without the digital engineering, technology and broadcasting teams. It's just not possible without them.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. That's a really good introduction now to meet the graduate. I was just thinking, Mark, when I was just looking at your little face, I remember when telly was just like 3 channels, and now you're talking about all these different channels and everything else. Blows my mind. Mark, thank you very much for the introduction. What we're going to do now is meet the other panellists. So everybody used GradCracker extensively during their job search and researched the BBC through the company hub on GradCracker. Now, Ian, I'm going to start with you. Could you introduce yourself to the audience, where you studied at university and what you studied?
Hi, I'm Ian, and I studied at Strathclyde University in Glasgow. Yeah. I studied a mixture of electrical engineering and computer science, and that was under a computer and electronic systems course.
Fantastic, thank you, Ian. On to you, Sebastian.
Hello, I'm Sebastian. I studied physics at the University of Manchester, and somehow went from spending several years sitting in labs playing with lasers to developing new tech for the BBC. So I'm currently on the BBC R&D graduate scheme.
Brilliant. Playing with lasers sounds a bit scary. Sarah?
Hi, I studied at Leeds Beckett University, and I studied music technology, even though now I'm on the software engineering grad scheme, but yeah, there we go.
This is what's really interesting though, isn't it, Jess? We speak to a lot of students and they might have studied something at university, but then they want to go and study, go on and do something different from their degree. So yeah, it's definitely something that we're finding a lot of as part of these webinars. Now, India, something a little bit different about you. So you're currently studying for a degree apprenticeship at Birmingham City. So just tell everybody a bit about the degree apprenticeships and what subject are you actually studying?
So I'm studying a broadcast engineering and media systems degree at the moment at Birmingham City University. So with my degree apprenticeship, we do blocks of placement and blocks of university that are separate to each other. So traditionally in apprenticeships, you'll tend to do 4 days a week at work and then a week with the education provider. But I find that this apprenticeship is really well structured in that it separates the uni and the work.
Yeah. So what does your week look like then? Do you spend days in at university, or when everything's back to normal? How does it all work? How you structure your day-to-day life?
So if it's a placement block, then I'll be in work. And I'll be doing whatever it is that I'm doing on placement. Placements vary quite a lot because broadcast engineering covers a huge range of jobs, really. It's quite a difficult job to try and explain. But if it's uni, then we're different to most uni students, where we're in pretty much 9 to 5 in the week that we're there, apart from on our Fridays where we'll be there until lunchtime because we have to travel back. But yeah, so we don't live in student halls or anything like that. We get put up in accommodation on a weekly basis. And yeah, that's kind of a week in each setting.
And how long, just staying with you, India, before I move on to the other grads, so how long will it take to actually get your degree, your degree qualification?
So I am working towards a bachelor's degree, and it will be the same amount of time as if I was to go to university and do a bachelor's degree. So my course is 3 years. And because of that, it's why we have to do so much uni time in such a short amount of time, because we're trying to fit a 3-year degree around placements and training as well, but in the same time period.
Perfect. Thank you very much, India. That's really interesting to find out some more about degree apprenticeships. Now moving on to your current roles at the BBC. So Ian, I'm going to go back to you. If you could just tell the viewers just a little bit more about how long you've been at the BBC and your current role.
Sure. So I've only been at the BBC since September. So I joined the Research and Development graduate scheme I was in this position last year, and sorry, as in the position people watching this are in. Yeah, so I'm in it's kind of split. It's a 2-year scheme split into 3 8-month placements.
Yeah.
So I'm just come to the end of my first 8-month placement.
Yeah.
And yeah, just come to the end of my first project.
Super. I think we're going to find out a little bit more about that project later on. But where's your next placement based then, Ian? Is it in a different department, or what's next?
Yeah, it'll be a different department within research and development. So just going through the process of that right now. I've kind of chosen what one I'd like to do, and then we'll see what everyone wants to do and work out a nice compromise for everybody.
Fantastic. Is that how it works then? Do you get to choose which placement you want to go on next, or is it a bit between what the BBC needs as a business and obviously what you would like to do?
Yeah, it's a balance of those things. It's seeing what's needed, what you'd like to do, and seeing what the other graduates want to do as well, and seeing if everyone can be made happy. I think there's an algorithm for it that someone's worked out. So
the algorithm of happiness, I could do with that. Yeah. And Sarah, on to you. So how long have you been at BBC, and what is your role?
I've been at the BBC for just over 18 months. So I'm like in my final placement or like rotation of the scheme. So I think it's similar to Ian, where we have like 4 rotations within 2 years. So yeah, I'm coming up to the end of that now. So yeah.
Fantastic. And on to you, Sebastian, last but not least.
So like Ian, I'm also on the Research and Development graduate scheme. However, I joined in 2019. So I've actually seen the office, which was quite exciting once upon a time. So as Ian mentioned, within the grad scheme, we do 3 different placements of 8 months each within wildly different teams within research and development. I'm currently on my 3rd and final one of those placements, after which I will have to work out where in R&D I want to spend the rest of my days, which sounds more ominous than I mean it to be.
Yeah, that does sound rather upsetting about spending the rest of your days. So how does it work then, Sebastian? So are you guaranteed a role after the graduate scheme, after the graduate program's finished? And is that
Yes.
the same for everybody?
So at least within R&D, it's very much kind of a traineeship more than a scheme that you finish and then move on and have to apply for a new job. So your first project in R&D is chosen for you based on your background to give you something, introduce you to R&D and give you something that would be vaguely familiar to you. And then as Ian says, there are a list of projects that come out and you sort of apply for the next few, but there's a relatively small graduate cohort each year. So there's kind of discussion that goes on around who would go onto which particular project, who would be best suited, what you would learn, and also what the business needs are. Although projects are usually only put forwards if they actually fulfill the business needs. So it's quite a friendly and interesting process to go through. And then, yeah, once you choose your final project, usually in an area of interest or somewhere that you'd actually like to work long term. And then when you finish the graduate scheme, so we go on an additional 3-month placement anywhere else in the BBC that we can organise to increase our networking, get some contacts, and just kind of experience life outside of R&D before moving on to our final team.
I like that. So is that is that the same for every scheme then? I don't know if Sebastian, if you can answer this, or is this just for R&D? I'm getting nods and shakes. Yeah, just for R&D. Oh, that's a really good idea. So have you got any ideas, Sebastian, where you're going to go for this 3 months?
So I'm currently trying to organise a placement with the natural history unit. I don't know what it's going to be at this point or what it would involve, and probably can't say any specifics. But yeah, it would be really, really quite exciting just because it would be so wildly different to what I'm currently doing, but it would be interesting to go and view or work in that from a technological standpoint as well.
Yeah.
Sebastian, do you have to like officially apply for that then, as if you were applying for a job, or do you just kind of, has it an internal chat that you get to have? How does that work?
So the 3-month placement is whatever we can organise, basically. Right. There are a number of departments around the BBC which R&D has very, very close links with. So if you haven't organised something more major, it's very easy to kind of pick one of those teams and go and work with for 3 months to get that experience. But there was a person a couple of years above me in the graduate scheme who went and worked in New Delhi for the BBC World Service for hers. So it really is whatever you can organise.
Nobody's asked me if they want to come into recruitment. You know, it's always recruitment, Sebastian. You know, it's an exciting world recruiting people. You know, always.
I'd be there, love, in a heartbeat. You know me. I'd be there, right hand woman to you. I'd go Springwatch. I know, Sebastian, you're going to talk about a project with Springwatch, but that is one of my favourite ever programmes on the BBC. So just put it out there. Chris Packham. Oh, Monty Don Gad as well. That'd be mine as well. So if you can get me in, Mark, so I can meet Monty. Right, guys, what we're going to do, India, I think we touched upon your role a little bit earlier on. So we're going to now move on and then come back to you about your projects and things like that and your experiences so far, if you don't mind. Just a little bit of background knowledge as well for you guys who are watching the webinar. Mentioned that Mark and Rachel have been working really hard on their hub. We've got lots of brand new content on there at the moment. So things like the culture at the BBC, application processes, some really cool videos which are worth a watch. And just remember, all of this combined, as well as watching this webinar, will help you put in a really good quality application to the BBC's either internships or graduate opportunities, which are open, so make sure you apply. Jess?
Me?
You, my love.
So yeah, Mark, I want to talk to you, if that's okay, about the application process. So we all know, obviously, the world that we live in at the moment, the application process might have changed slightly. So anyone that is thinking about applying to you guys after this session, what can they expect?
It's a very good question. Yes, we have had some new challenges this year. And I think my approach to this has been sort of, what can we do to make an experience, make the experience feel at least interactive a little bit, so you get some feedback from the experience that you're going to have and what we're going to do. So there's a couple of different approaches that I've taken this year. Again, I'll touch on them because there are slight differences. So the editorial schemes, production and journalism, the way that process works is the sort of an application process, which includes a video interview.
Yeah.
For the tech schemes, the engineering, design and tech schemes that we're talking about today, we're actually using a gamification tool as part of this. So there's an application form that we've bespoke built. So my team have built those forms, which will ask you about yourself. So the standard things that you'd expect, information about who you are, what you've studied, potentially about some of the modules that you've studied, and whether you'd be right for each of the schemes. So the questionnaires are designed to sort of help make sure that we can see what your best fit is.
Yeah.
The R&D form goes a little bit further because Graham, the hiring manager for that, has also set a little research task as part of his application form, where you'll go through, and there's a bit of a multiple choice question where you'll go, we want you to take a look at the R&D website and try and answer these multiple choice questions in the application form. So for R&D this year, working with Graham, he's sort of come up with something a little bit different.
Yeah.
But for all of the guys, including the software roles and the broadcast roles here, we're going to use this game this year. The provider, is not a secret, it's a company called Arctic Shores.
Mm-hmm.
And through that, they use some psychometric games that we'd ask our applicants to go through. And what that does is it sort of maps out, using some very clever recruitment psychology, sort of your best fit for these positions. And we've worked with Arctic Shores to sort of create like a BBC fit model, and it sort of helps us to try and find the best people for BBC. So it might feel a little bit weird, and it's definitely something that I think is more common now than it has been, but to do a game as part of your recruitment process might feel a bit weird. You go, how does this relate to anything that I'm doing? And again, it's the employment psychology behind all of that. It's actually really interesting and very, very complicated sometimes as well. But the games themselves should be really enjoyable. They should feel fun and they should feel interactive. The system itself also sends you a feedback report. So once you've completed the game, you'll actually get a report back to yourself and emailed out to you, which will tell you more about how you've got on with that and what it will be. It won't be sort of a pass-fail, you've passed, you've failed. It doesn't do that. It will just tell you how you have performed as part of that process and give you some sort of things that you can learn from your experience on the game. So everybody that applies to a technology, engineering or broadcasting role will end up with one of these sort of Arctic Shores reports about how they've got on with their performance in their game.
Mark, just a question there,
Yeah.
sorry, interrupting. If, say, for example, you did apply to an R&D role, but because of the results of that gamification test, you all, as BBC, thought that that candidate would be better somewhere else. Do you suggest that, or does that happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think that we do sort of do some talent pooling. We go, actually, there's some candidates here, but I think the way that we would tend to do it is people can apply to more than one role anyway. So we encourage people. It sounds like a sort of strange thing to say, isn't it, really? If you're interested in more than one of our schemes, we actually we are a company that allows you to apply for more than one.
Brilliant.
As you move through the process, and say you're selected for interview for both, we might then come to you and go, right, which one are you most interested in? Because you do eventually have to make a choice.
Yeah.
But if you were interested in R&D and software, for example, at the BBC, you can apply to both schemes. And eventually, if you're successful for both, we would go, right, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
Because they ultimately have to end up picking one of them. So yeah, it's a good question. So I would encourage people to say, actually, if you're interested in more than one of them, to explore both. You know, obviously it's important to sort of follow the things that you're most interested in, but you know what, people can be interested in more than one thing, and we're happy to accept applicants from candidates in more than one area.
And I think that's the thing as well, you know, just with the examples that, you know, Sebastian, Ian, you know, and Sarah, you go and you can study one thing and then, you know, have a career in something completely different and might not even realise that that was your career path and you're going to end up there. So yeah, that's great that, you know, you can put multiple applications in. So don't just put all your eggs in one basket, as the saying goes. And then that's the whole process then, Mark.
So, that's for the game. So what happens then? So what happens then is we work really, really closely with the business at this point. So we've got the managers for the programs. So we work with some people in the BBC Academy that sort of look after the training and development for people on some of our higher apprenticeships, and some of the training schemes have sort of like a training scheme manager. But we've also got the hiring managers for the different business areas. So I'll hop back to Graham a little bit, who looks after the R&D processes. So me and Graham have worked really closely together to make sure that his application form is going to work for his work, and he's sort of come up with the research plan that we've got together. We'll do the game, and me and Graham will work with everybody to make sure that we've shortlisted together on the candidates that make it through. And then this year there will be some, I think we're still focusing on the virtual world at this moment in time. So there'll be some kind of assessments via Zoom, I think, at the moment. We are making sure that we can adapt our processes to what suits people best. It doesn't mean that Zoom is going to work for everybody. If we have to do telephone calls, or we do a different piece of technology, or we approach the application process so that we can adapt things at various stages based on, you know, what people need, because we want it to be open and accessible to everybody. But if I was to give you the typical next bit, it will probably be a meeting with the scheme manager or the line manager for that process, where we do a couple of activities. It could be presenting us back an idea, and then we ask you some questions about it. And the interview questions we ask are largely strength-based. So we will ask some competency questions, and competency questions are the ones that people are most used to, which are, give me an example of a time you've done this thing. We do have a few of those. But you'll also see questions where we go, imagine that you're doing this, what would you do? So you don't ever have had to have done it before in order to give us an answer. And that's one of our strengths type questions. So if you're given a question which is, can you tell us what you would do or how you would approach something, you don't always have to have an example in order to give us a good answer. So it's worth listening out for the type of question you're being asked as well, because there will be a few different types of interview questions. We call it our blended interview approach, where we use a mixture of strengths and competencies.
Brilliant. That all sounds good. What I wanted to kind of move to next is kind of speak to the grads and really kind of getting a bit of a hint and tip from them on, you know, your experience, and what advice could you give to anyone, again, thinking about applying to the BBC after this session. So Ian, coming to you, what would your hint and tip be?
I'd say for R&D, it would be really good to just showcase your creativity and your personality. I know after my interview with R&D, I came away thinking that either went really well or really badly, and mostly down to whether or not I came across well. But you know, obviously that ended up paying off for me, and I think that is partially because I, you know, wasn't afraid to show who I was, and yeah.
you know, when you said, you know, show off your creativity, was there a particular example that you gave to kind of show that skill off?
Yeah, well, I mean, while I studied computer science and electrical engineering, I was always interested in creative applications of that. So I had I'd done some work on making props for a film.
Oh, cool. Right.
I got involved in like an art project as well, making some animatronics and robotics and things like that. So yeah, I think if you've got the time between now, or if you've done any of that stuff and you're applying, then it's always good to kind of seek out some more creative applications of what you do as well.
100%. And I think the audience is going to probably know what I'm going to say next. You know, always think outside the box when it comes to, you know, extra curricular kind of activities. You know, again, at Gradcracker, we always push being part of a STEM society or anything else that you can do outside of your degree. You know, really do try and get involved, whether it be, you know, creating something creative, you know, arts or crafts and things like that, right through to, you know, something that really kind of reflects the degree you're studying. You know, it's definitely beneficial to do that. And remember, you know, I'm going to say again, if you're part of a STEM society, get involved, drop my colleague Georgia an email because we can give you a free hub on the society page and we can get lots of likes from our employers. Sebastian, coming to you next.
Sure. So this is one that I think may sound a little generic at first, but specifically for R&D, just it's really, really important to make sure your passion for what you're doing comes across. And not just like, you know, oh, I've always wanted to do this exact bit of work all of my life, but for you know, I clearly made them really impressed with just how much I loved lasers, because at the time that was my entire life. I spent, you know, 8 hours a day in a lab doing that, and it was not just the passion for like the work you're doing, but the sort of like having an inquiring mind around that passion and just asking questions and wanting to know more about it and do better, which is more important almost than a lot of the hard skills that R&D would look for. Because if you're a very creative, you know, if you're someone who's a very creative problem solver and you're really passionate about the work that you do, it's quite relatively easy to teach you how to code, for example, compared to if you can code, but you really don't care about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Bringing that passion out is quite difficult. And R&D really thrives on the fact that there's 200 very passionate people in that department.
Oh, yeah. I think that's the thing, you know, passion is, you know, is the key bit to, you know, a good recipe, isn't it? Because if you've got that, you've got the enthusiasm, the will to find out, you know, what the future is of whatever you're doing. So brilliant. That's a really good one. Sarah, how about you?
Yeah, well, I totally agree with Sebastian and Ian about like passion, creativity, that kind of stuff. I'd say like for me, it was like just trying not to stress about not fitting the criteria that they lay out, like in the job spec and stuff like that. Like when I first read the software engineering graduate scheme, like job listing online, I was like, I can't do this. I haven't studied computer science, and like I haven't been doing it for that long. I've just been doing it in my spare time, like that kind of stuff. And I was just, I just didn't think I was capable of it. But I was like, well, I'll give it a go anyway, because it sounds really cool and I really want to, like, why not? So I applied, and then I just kept getting through this levels, and I was like, wow, this is really funny. I'm like, how am I getting through all the stages? And I think at the end of the day, like, they will overlook things. Like, they don't need you to know everything. I mean, that's the whole point of the grad scheme, is that you're there to learn. And as long as you're like you know, you said, like, passionate, and you've got some creativity or something going on, and you're interested in it and keen to learn, like, they'll overlook loads of stuff, which they definitely did for me. So yeah.
So many good points there, though. But Sarah, you literally are, you know, exactly what Ian and Sebastian said. You've got the passion, and you gave a good example of that. You know, you're creative enough to think, I'm going to think outside the box, and I'm going to chuck an application in anyway. So it's absolute win-win. So it's a perfect example of all those hints and tips. India, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'd agree with everything that's been said before that. I, much like Sarah, just kind of thought, I'll apply for this and see what happens, and kept on getting further and further, and here I am now. I think my biggest tip would be to just be yourself. One thing I found was that when you're applying for a job for a really big corporation, you kind of think, oh, you know, silly things like, am I going to have to wear a suit to work every day? Am I going to have to be very, very professional and kind of, you know, hide bits of me to fit this kind of like corporate person? But I found that working for the BBC, they really encourage you to just be yourself. You know, from what you wear to how, you know, the colors you want your hair, or just, you know, just your character as well. I think definitely don't stress about trying to fit into a certain type of person. Just be yourself and you'll be absolutely fine.
Yeah. I think that's a good point, because I think a lot of students, you know, when I speak to them, have, you know, preconceptions about working for a huge company, and, you know, is it going to be really corporate? Is it going to be, you know, am I going to fit in? Do I have to change? You know, but a lot of companies now, you know, they're trying to shake off that stigma almost, and, you know, they want everyone and anyone and to be yourself, because you can't go to work every day and pretend to be someone else, and, you know, you won't enjoy it, will you? So yeah, that's a really good point. And Mark, I want to come back to you if that's okay, just regarding kind of summing up what everyone's just said there and really giving the audience an idea of what your ideal candidate would be. But it sounds as though you haven't really got one.
I'd agree, Jess. Yeah, I don't think we really have. Do you know the big thing for me this year? And you know what? I joined the BBC back in January 2020. I did 6 weeks in the office, and I've worked from home for the rest of the time. And just listening to India talk then about, you know, sort of, I remember I was in the office the first few weeks, and I bought myself some new shirts and some nice new shoes. Do you know what? I haven't worn shoes actually. You know, I've got no shoes on now. You know, I've not worn shoes for nearly a year at work. It's bizarre, isn't it? I don't know if I'll ever be able to wear shoes again. So yeah, no, it's one of those things that, from a candidate perspective, I think the BBC from the outside feels like such a different, you know, such a huge sort of organisation, and it almost feels. It feels almost like there's no way the BBC will pick me or will be for me. But I would encourage anybody who sort of even feels like, I don't know if the BBC is going to be quite right for me. You know what? I would probably encourage you to apply, because you might be very, very surprised. The organisation is very, you know, very, very open to different ideas, and it has to be. I mean, to be around for the length of time the BBC has been around for, you know, the next generation of content that we have to create, you know, the next generation of potential license fee payers are, you know, the people leaving uni in the next few years, and you go, well, actually, what am I getting out of the BBC? You know, we speak to lots of people as part of my job, and they go, oh, I don't know if I watch the BBC. What do I watch the BBC for? And I think all of us on this call will go, do you know what? There's probably a mixture of people that probably feel like they don't get anything out of the BBC content that they're watching, you know. But you'd be very, very surprised about what we actually do. Everything from BBC Bite Size for people that we've done for working with schools this year from home and supporting teachers, all of the local radio station opportunities that we have, and sort of how local the BBC can feel, even though it feels like often you're like, oh, BBC's all London, isn't it? It's actually very local, and you'll see a lot more of that. A lot of these positions are going to be coming out to Birmingham and Salford and Glasgow. There's stuff in Ireland this year as well, in Belfast, Cardiff. You know, you'll see a lot more stuff outside of London as well. So I think people are thinking, do you know what? The BBC feels like a very London-centric, very sort of, you know, very posh, very British sort of culture. I think, yes, there is, you know, it'd be silly of me to say that the BBC doesn't have elements of that. But the future of the BBC isn't built around that. And the people that we're looking to recruit now will be shaping the direction of the BBC for the next, you know, the 100 years that are up again that we're facing next. So people who maybe don't feel the BBC is for them, we probably want you to come and work here, because you're going to be the future of what we're looking to do. So yeah, that's what I would say. There isn't probably a standard candidate. And you know what? The more you think, I don't know if the BBC is for me, the more I probably want you to apply.
Brilliant. Yeah, go for it. There you are.
I remember your first week at the BBC, Mark, and you went on your lunch break and you rang me. It must have been about 1:15, and you were like, "Hiya, mate, I'm at the BBC." And I was like, flipping it, Mark. Right, guys, I want to now move on to learning and development. So really personal points of view now, if we can. So I want to know a little bit about what piece of training that you've received did you enjoy the most, and what did you gain from it? And I'm going to start with you, India.
So on my course, we do a fair bit of training at Wood Norton, which is the BBC's training facility. And if you're there, you'll hear a lot about it. it's a training facility that's been used for ages. My dad is ex-BBC, and I grew up listening to the stories that he was telling about, you know, the experiences he was having at Wood Norton. But yeah, I think that is, we've done some studio training. So although I'm an engineer and I kind of take care of the stuff behind the scenes, we did all kind of get the chance to work in the studio as camera operators, vision mixer operators, lighting operators and stuff. So, which I think is actually a really useful thing, because I think what's good for anyone really, even if it's not what your job is, it's always good to have an idea of what other people are doing, because it can make your life a bit easier as well. What if you can understand coming from the job, it can kind of, you can understand what they're doing, they can understand what you're doing. It means that communication is a lot better, and you can kind of get to the same point that you want to get to a lot quicker and a lot easier than if you're coming from two different ends of the stick and completely what's going on. But yeah, I think that training was perhaps my favorite, because it was a chance to work in a team. It was during our
India, I think
right when we started the course. So
sorry, India, I think we've got some issues with your sound, but I think we've grasped what you were going to say. And I think from our point of view, yeah, massively. I think if you do other people's roles as well, it just gives you empathy from their point of view. They can understand what you're trying to achieve, and you can understand what they're trying to achieve. And hopefully, India, we can come back to you. I'm just a bit worried about your sound. But for now, I'm going to move on to Sarah. So Sarah, personal point of view, bit of training that you've had enjoyed the most, and what do you think you gained from it?
So I have done quite a few courses now, but I think the one that I enjoyed the most was the React Academy course. If you guys know React, it's just a JavaScript library, very popular. Well, yeah, these days, and a lot of BBC, very like teams are starting to use it more and more. So yeah, I got to do some React training, and the instructor was just really cool. She was like really fun, and yeah, we just had a good time. And this was like the last training I did in the office. I remember it was just like, are we going to be allowed back in ever again? And I was like, cool. So that's like my last nice memory of being in the office doing this React training. I think it's like the last week or something. So maybe that's why, but there we go.
Do you think you'll be allowed back in the office, Sarah? What are the plans for you to go back in?
I mean, like, it's very like vague right now. So I don't, hopefully like at least we'll be able to go in and have like meetings and things like in the next, maybe in a couple of months or so, but no one's actually said anything definite. But yeah, that was a good course, and I really learned a lot about React, which has been very useful.
Point though, because obviously your background with your music course that you did, and then coming in to do software, the fact that BBC can offer those kind of upskilling kind of courses, for anyone that was or is thinking about being able to kind of transfer your skills and do something different at the end of your degree. A lot of the employers now are making sure that they can upskill you still with additional courses, and they all want you to be the best you can be. So it's good that you've done that, and other courses have been offered, which is
great.
Brilliant, thanks Sarah. And what I want to do now is move on to the boys. So Ian and Sebastian start off with, and Ian, your project that you've been working on, so it's your first project that you're just about to come to an end with. Can you just tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. It's quite a technical one, which, as Sebastian mentioned earlier, they'd matched to me based on the degree I'd done. It's part of R&D's kind of part of their remit is to look ahead about 10 years ahead and think about what's the BBC going to be like then, what's society going to be like then, and how are those going to interact. And part of that is building kind of media production systems that right now would kind of be hardware, and putting those into the cloud as software. And my current project is designing a security system for these cloud services. which when I saw it, I was a bit like, why are they trusting me to do that? That sounds important. But I've been doing it as part of a team of really experienced developers.
Yeah.
So at every stage, I've been able to ask questions all the time. So yeah, it's been you come out of a computer science degree thinking that you're quite good, and then you realize, oh no, you're not. So I've learned so much in the last 8 months. Yeah.
I think that's really important though, isn't it? What you learn at university, is one thing, and you've gathered all this knowledge together, and then it's kind of like starting again, isn't it, at an organisation or an employer, because you might not know how their systems work and everything else. So it's all a massive learning curve. And you mentioned your team there, Ian. So what does your team look like? How often do you get together as a team to discuss the project that you're working on?
Sure. So there's a couple of there's like scheduled get-togethers where it's quite normal in software teams have what's called stand-ups, where you talk about the jobs that you've been working on, how they're going, and kind of at those points, if you've got any problems, people will just stay behind to talk to you and work on it with you. And otherwise, if I have an issue, I can message as like a group chat, and someone will just jump on Zoom and go through it with me. So yeah, and then there's scheduled, like coffee breaks and things like that, where it's a social occasion to get together as well. Yeah.
And how long typically does like this project last for then, or is it kind of ongoing because there's so much data to be able to process? How long would a typical project last?
For R&D?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big mix. You've got ones that are quite short term. You've got ones that are like constantly evolving, and yeah, it's just the nature of research in that way. Perfect.
Thanks, Ian. Sebastian, I'm so excited. So your project, your favourite project, shut up, Jess, is Springwatch. Tell me more.
So I've just started on a new team, excitingly titled the Intelligent Production Tools team. But what we're doing is quite cool. We're working with the team that makes Springwatch, Autumn Watch, and Winter Watch to try and improve their production. So the kind of, at the moment, some poor person has to listen through hundreds of hours and watch through hundreds of hours of streams of Springwatch, Autumn Watch, and Winter Watch to make sure that there's no sounds that shouldn't be there, like aeroplanes flying overhead, cars driving past, producers talking behind a camera, or a deer cull going on in the next field. It doesn't sit very well with the audience.
That would not be good.
No, and it's quite challenging. There's sort of teams of zoologists who have to spend literally days just listening through all of this stuff. So I've just started on a project where I'm going to be developing a machine learning based system that we're going to train to detect sounds that shouldn't be there and hopefully flag it up to the producers so that they don't have to listen through it all manually.
Wow, that's a good idea.
That is pretty cool. See, when you watch these programs, though, you just don't
really know stuff like that, yeah.
So the team that I've joined has just finished doing some stuff where they can automatically detect what the animals are on screen with some sort of machine learning vision based work, but we haven't touched anything with the sound yet. So my final graduate project, I really wanted to do a machine learning based project. So I spoke to the people on the team, was like, hey, can you put together a project for me that would involve this sort of thing? They're like, yeah, there's this really important piece of work that we need to do. So I'm currently reading a lot of papers about how to detect sounds with and learning about machine learning.
So when will this be brought into fruition then? So if I'm watching, what are we in now? If I'm watching Summer Watch, can I say, Sebastian, I've met him and he's worked on this?
So it's likely that the stuff I'm building won't hit it until probably latter, sort of much later in this year. So maybe Autumn Watch, Winter Watch is our target for this bit of particular project. But if it's something that people are interested in, if you go on the BBC Research and Development blog site, there's a couple of really interesting bits of information about like the video work they've done with kind of the detection of different animals. And then hopefully in about 8 months' time, there'll be a really interesting bit of work, a bit of information about the audio work that I've been working on with detection of sounds, and if it works particularly well and I've got enough time, maybe animal detection based on sound as well.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
I need to head off. I've got something on, but
Yeah, no, that's fine.
great to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining us, Ian. Take care.
All right.
Bye. Bye. Sarah, my screen keeps moving around. Sarah, you were there, now you're there. So your project is based on coronavirus. You did send me a link to this and it was very interesting. Can you just explain to the viewers what the project included?
So yeah, I basically did a rotation in a news team between March and September last year, which is when a lot of coronavirus stuff was in the news and still is. But so we make sort of like interactive news pieces. So anything that's a bit more than like text and pictures, like we create interactive news stories in that team. So I got to like work on a relatively artsy kind of news story, which is like visualizing like the deaths and cases around the world. I could share my screen, or is that really unorthodox? Is that too dangerous?
I'm just worried about technology, but what we'll do is I've got the link, Sarah, so we'll put it on the BBC hub on GradCracker.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, otherwise I'm going to have to describe it, which is difficult. It's just like, it's an audiovisual thing. So there's like these flowers that grow and the petals represent like the cases, and like I got to use like my music background as well to do the there's like a sonification, like an audio part to it that represents the data. So I got to like compose some music that would be like each death or whatever would trigger like a toll or like a synth or like something. So it's got like, yeah, it was really fun.
Oh, I want to watch that now. Yeah, we'll have to watch that slide as soon as
I'll put that on the hub, Sarah, but I could definitely see when you sent that link before the webinar, your music talent came out in that the graphic and everything else. Yeah, really interesting. So we'll share that with you guys and the audience afterwards. India, I'm hoping your sound's a little bit better, my love, now. So if it is your project based, is it in CNN, on CNN?
So we've done
India, I'm gonna stop you. Your sound's not great still. So what we'll do is, I don't know if you can hear me. What we'll do is we'll go back to.
I was involved in a project when I was on placement. Is it still bad?
It is still bad, India.
I'll try now. Is that any better?
Oh, maybe. Go for it. What we'll do, guys, is we'll come back to India. I know all about India's projects and things like that. So what we'll do.
Still not great.
No.
Oh, hello?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
If I mute India now, bless her, I know that sounds a bit rude, but I'll mute her for now.
It seems to be a lot of delay.
India's gone, so what we'll do is technology. What we'll do is we'll come back to India. We know about all her projects that she's been involved in. A really good project with CNN, which we'll touch upon a little bit later on. What we'll do is we'll put India's profile on GradCracker as well, just to make sure that her experiences are known to you, the audience. So yeah, we'll move on slightly now, and I think we're going to talk about the social aspects that everybody's enjoyed at the BBC so far.
Yeah, I know Ian touched upon it as well when he mentioned about, getting together for coffees and group chats on Zoom and things like that. But Sebastian, what kind of social aspect, because I know you've had the luxury of being in the office and obviously working remotely. So yeah, can you tell us a bit about the social aspects of your role so far?
Yeah, sure. So back when we were in the office, I'll just start on this because hopefully this will be an experience which new joiners will be able to actually have. Within research and development, we had a whole variety of lunchtime and after work clubs, which is really weird to have for such a small department, but it was great fun. So I used to play rugby on lunchtime. Sometimes we'd have after work board games. There were cinema clubs, hiking clubs, climbing clubs, all sorts of different things that people used to do at lunchtimes and after work in the R&D office. And also one of the really cool bits about being in R&D is we've got basically one of every bit of consumer tech that we need to play with hanging around. So there's sort of a room with a big box of virtual reality headsets, which play with for research purposes. So all sorts of fun stuff like that. And since we've all had to move online, we have, well, my team has, there's a coffee chat that you can log into every morning. Some, quite often I'm not quite awake enough to get along to that, but it's occasionally quite nice just to chat to people. We have, with the rest of my graduate cohort, we have semi-regular meetups on Zoom after work and things at the moment, and then there's fairly regular kind of lunchtime or coffee chats that are just, they're not compulsory. No one likes properly organized fun and being forced to sit on Zoom for another half hour if you've already been on there all day. But it's nice just that they're open, people can just turn up and chat for a bit, which is very pleasant. We also are running a bunch of online board game clubs on lunchtimes and after work as well, because that's a relatively easy thing to do online compared to, say, hiking.
Or rugby.
Or rugby.
That's cool. I like that, Sebastian. And it's nice, isn't it, that you can get the chance to still network, still kind of create a bit of friendship, relationships with everyone, and it's great. And Sarah, how about you? Have you had any social experiences so far?
No, I haven't. I used to, like, back in the pre-COVID times, I would do like football on lunch, and I joined a choir. There's like some choir, like BBC choir, not the like official one, just the staff one. There's just there's loads of stuff going on, loads of events. I went to quite a lot of like women in STEM stuff. That's a really strong network. That's really, really, really great, and everyone's lovely. You can get involved with so many different things if you're up for it. But
I'm going to ask a bit of a cheesy question, but has anyone met anyone exciting, any celebrities? Do you see them walking around? Do you see them a lot? I'm so excited.
We get banished to the nerd zone. I don't really get to see anyone. Cool.
Sebastian has, he was nodding. Have you?
I was notably Craig Charles. You presented a lot of radio shows on the floor below where I worked, which you had to go past to get to the cafe. So I saw him just wandering around quite a few times. I've seen a bunch of other kind of relatively big names in kind of news or sport walking around in some of the other buildings over time as well. It's quite cool. It's very weird the first time. And then, after a little while, you're like, oh, I work at the BBC, and so do these people. So,
oh my God, I won't be sly enough.
It would be like that as well. You'd be like, Callum, just play it cool. I'm not cool.
So next I want to talk about the future. I feel like I'm ignoring India, and I apologise if I am. I'll ask to unmute. Is she back? Are you back? India, are you there, my love?
I am.
Fab, yes.
Brilliant.
Woo! Do you want to add anything to that? Have you seen it? Well, first of all, I've seen her on Famous, and two, what's the social aspects like?
So one, well, have I seen anyone play? I luckily in my first placement got to sit in with Annie Mac on one of her radio shows.
Love that.
So that was quite fun. I've also repaired an in-ear monitor for Matt Taylor, one of the weather presenters.
Ear monitor, did you say?
Yeah, the in-ear monitor. So what they listen to the producers and stuff while they're presenting. But yeah, again, it's just seeing, because I'm based in NBH in London, so I've had the chance to see quite a lot of people. In terms of the social aspects, again, luckily I joined in 2019, so I had a little bit of time in the office. And again, it was kind of, you'd find people in the department, you'd go for lunch together perhaps, or the pub after work. But even now we've kind of had the occasional Zoom meeting across cohorts for me, so like the apprentices in the year below me on the same course, we'd kind of do a Zoom call together just to kind of interact with each other, because none of us are really getting any in-office time at the moment.
Oh, that'll be nice as well. I suppose you'll act as a bit of a mentor for the people who are younger than you on the as well in last years.
Brilliant. That all sounds good. Just gonna kind of move on slightly. Sarah, I'm going to ask you about your future, and then Sebastian, I'm going to come to you about the key benefits of the BBC. So Sarah, coming back to you, what is your future looking like? Have you got a plan yet?
This is like the hardest question. Like, I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, I hopefully have a future.
You definitely
Have a future, Sarah.
I have a future. So in September, I'll finish the grad scheme, and then I will hopefully get a nice, more permanent job in one of the teams somewhere. I mean, I am contractually have to get a job somewhere if I want. But yes, so, and then after that, I guess I can hopefully, if I enjoy that, can start making plans for becoming like more senior software engineer, or whatever. I think it's quite easy to move around. Maybe I'll change my mind and become a journalist. Maybe I will.
You never know. At least you've got the options.
Exactly.
Want to wake up and become a journalist? You're in the best place, aren't you?
Yeah.
We could tune into the Lunch Show and you could be on there, Sarah. Lunch Show.
Exactly. Get on the screen.
You never know.
And Sebastian, I'm going to come to you about the key benefits on offer at the BBC. What would you say that is?
So one of the things I kind of highlight above and beyond everything else would be the culture. It's a really weird and interesting organization to work for. So I very briefly worked in much more corporate tech land before coming to the BBC. And because the BBC is a public service organization, and really because there's so much scrutiny of it, it has to exist as this paragon of how a British business should run. So the amount of care for every individual as an employee is really, really high. Everyone who works there, and this is kind of part of getting in the BBC, is really passionate about the BBC, its mission and its values. Yeah. And it just creates a really wonderful environment where everyone is focused on what they're doing because they want it to succeed and they're happy about it. And they're also being provided a really good working environment in which to do all of this stuff in, nice locations with very, very reasonable hours. I've had people on my team, senior members of my team back in, office time tell me at 5:30, why am you still in that chair? Go home. They're like, oh, but I'm just trying to finish this. It's like, no, you finish this on our time tomorrow. You go and have your evening. And it's just a real level of care for people's lives that you get while working there, and pretty decent holiday and everything else as well along with it.
Nicely done. I think that's a lovely way to hand it over.
Yeah, what more could you ask for? So now I want to just go around the room and just get a quick top fact about the BBC. So let's make them snappy. Sarah, I'm going to start with you. What is your key fact about the BBC that people might not know about?
I was sort of going to say something about what Sebastian just said, that the work-life balance is really great. Am I allowed to still use that?
You can, yeah. I'll let you have that one. Sebastian, you're not allowed to say something that you've just said.
Something new, please.
The BBC is way bigger than I thought it was. We've got 22,000 full-time employees, and I think there's 35,500 total people work for the BBC worldwide. It's by far the world's largest broadcaster.
It's just madness, isn't it? How many people work for the BBC? Wow. India.
One of my interesting facts. You might have to come back to me on this one.
You can, my love. Yeah. Mark, have you got one for me? Don't let me down, Mark.
You know what? It's a weird one, but when you're watching the news and you're watching people sort of read the news to you, they can a lot of the time they're controlling their own auto cue with their pedal underneath the desk. The guys on Midlands today, I know not everybody's going to be in the Midlands, but the guys on Midlands today, often the presenter only has one shoe on because he's controlling the foot pedal with just a bare foot or his sock. So they're not always wearing shoes on there as well. I've focused on my shoes quite a lot today, haven't I? But they don't even always wear shoes when they're on the telly. They're sort of playing with the pedal and messing with the auto cue.
I've got a question actually. And I saw a picture, and I can't remember where I saw it, I think it was on social media somewhere. And there was a news lady sat at a desk, but she's actually just, everything behind is just a green screen. Yeah, whereas when you're watching the news, it looks like a live office behind. Is that not
Yeah,
always
there's no live office, mate. No. If you look, it'll never change. All those people have sat in those seats doing that work for years. No, there's nobody there. It's
Oh my God, I honestly thought, because I've always thought when I've watched it, God, those people are really good at that. You know, there's no arguments going on. There's no one throwing anything.
Yeah.
They're all on the best behaviour.
Yeah, most of that stuff is just a screen. I mean, I guess there are some offices where there's people moving around in the background, but the ones that most of the time when you're watching in the background of the news or something like that, it's just a scrreen.
Just normal companies don't argue and throw things around like me and you do at Grad Cracker and scream at you across the office. Jessica, Mark, I'll let you into a secret. I'm actually shoeless and wearing unicorn slippers.
It's perfect. It's the best way to work.
Exactly, that's what I think as well. Who needs a shoe? Right, guys, thank you very much. India, did you have a fact? I don't want to leave you out.
Yeah, it's a bit of an old one, but where New Broadcasting House was built onto Old Broadcasting House, there's a discrepancy in the size of the floors. So you can get a lift from floor 5 of Old Broadcasting House to floor 5 of New Broadcasting House, and it takes you about 7 inches.
Never.
Yeah.
Oh, see, that was well worth the wait. Thank you very much for that, India. And sorry that we lost you halfway through, my love, but at least you're back.
That's all right.
And yes, so thanks guys for joining us today. It's been an absolute brilliant insight into the BBC. We've learned a lot, haven't we, Jessica, as we always do on these webinars, and I hope you have as well, the audience. Don't forget, like me and Mark were saying at the beginning, myself and Mark were saying at the beginning of the webinar about the fact that the BBC is open to applications, so get your applications in via the BBC Hub on GradCracker. Don't forget that you can rewatch this webinar tomorrow, so it'll be on as a winner, as I would say, on the BBC Hub, and then we'll break it down into bite-sized chunks for you and your friends, and that will be live next week. So thanks very much for joining us today. Next week, Jessica and myself are joined by ARM. So did you know that 70% of the global population actually use ARM technology? I didn't know that, but next week you can find out a lot more. So thanks everybody for joining us today. We can hope to see you next week and see you all soon. Bye-bye.
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 Bye.